So the essential question, what ways can functions be viewed? What ways can functions be viewed? The topic today, 3 views of a function. Let's get that down at the top. All right, you have this on your paper, except you don't have a table written down or the equation written down. So sometimes your guided notes are just, hey, let's place this piece here. So let's write down 3 ways to view a function. First, we could have an equation like y equals negative 2x plus 4. We could also have a t-chart. I call this a t-chart. However, I don't know what you guys learned. So an xy chart, some teachers say it's an xy chart, but we can view a function as a table. We can also view a function as a line. So, given an equation, you're going to create a table. We're going to start off with the equation y equals negative 3x plus 2, which is not on your paper. You also don't have a table ready to go. So, we're also going to need to sketch some sort of table format. So, if I'm going to give a table, first you need an x and a y spot. We're going to plug in 7. You just pick a value. We're going to plug in 7 and try to figure out what the output is. I may need to do some work off to the side, like, okay, I have to do negative 3 times that 7 plus 2. So after I do the simplification of plugging in 7, I'm going to put negative 19. You pick another number. So if we plug in 2, then I'm going to do some side work. So that negative 4 outcome, we're going to put in the y, and so on. So if I pick 3, plug it in, so we create a table. Sometimes I'm going to give you an equation and ask you to give me a table. So we're going to start with the table, and we're going to create the equation. When we create an equation, I want it in y equals mx plus b form. Let's make some notes here. Slope. So we talk about rise over run, but what you need to do here is you need to take, we had this equation last year of subtract some y's over subtracting some x's. So then this number is going to be the y-intercept, meaning y-intercept is typically 0, comma, number, meaning there should be a 0 in the x column, and then the number, so it's not really, I guess, the number, it's whatever's actually in the b spot. So when we determine slope, I want you to first look at your y column. What's the jump? You're subtracting 3. Subtracting 3, so that's like a negative 3. If you say to go from the first y to the next y, I subtract 3, then you need to represent that with a minus sign. But what about, now what's the jump from the first x to the next x? You're adding 1. I need to divide the y column by the x column. There's your slope. So my y-intercept needs to be 0, comma b, meaning there's got to be a 0 in my x. So right here, there's my b, meaning that would be 0, comma 5. So technically this number will be a 5. Let's see what the equation will look like in the end. I'm going to repeat what I just said so that way people at home can hear me. So y equals negative 3 times x plus 5. The negative 3 comes from the slope. The 5 comes from, well, what in the table was our y-intercept? Shabam. And what we're going to do is, given this table, we're going to figure out how would we graph it. So after we map the points and graph them appropriately, then we connect them with a straight line using a straight edge. Let's also put arrows on the end there because it's a line. It continues on forever. Given a line, we're going to figure out how to create the table. You already have this on your piece of paper. Now let's create a table. Let's figure out, okay, where are these points, and let's just put them onto the table. And so on. So 0, 4, 1, 6, 2, 8. So now maybe we could use the previous example with that table to try to create the equation. For this slope, looking at rise over run, just pick a point. I'm going to pick this point and figure out how much do I rise, how much do I run. Looks like I move up 2, right 1. Those are both positive directions. So for my slope, looking like I go up 2, right 1. Now it's our y-intercept. So the y-intercept is where we're going to cross that y-axis. It looks like a 4. So y equals 2x plus 4, your y-intercept. You could either go to the middle ground of, well, can I create a table for those and then try to figure out, okay, what's the change in the y column, what's the change in the x column, and then pick out a slope, or you could determine rise over run. All right, let's go to the next one. So now that I have an equation, let's create the graph. So if I can realize that this is in y equals mx plus b, this y-intercept, this is going to go on the y-axis first. Start there. So let's put a point on the -1 on the y-axis. So going slope now, we're going to move down 3, right 1, paying attention to the signs that we assign. And we start at the -1 already put on the graph. So down 3, right 1, create a point. Down 3, right 1 again, create another point. Down 3, right 1, create another point. What if I wanted points off to the left? Create a line using a straight edge, and make sure you put arrows along that line.